what everyone kind of needs to realize is that hormone optimization is a nuanced practice. If we're limited to thinking that this is just an application of a drug, we're way off base. And that's why so many people are limited in their ability to get real help. We're digging deeper with patients, talking to them about stress, metabolic markers, lifestyle choices, sleep, nutrition, because all these components play into not only their hormones, but their symptoms that they have related to hormone imbalances. So sometimes it's not even actually a matter of improving hormones, it's improving the lifestyle.
We are about to launch.
What's up, everybody? Back here at Truth Not Trends. I am Liam TAKU Bauer. I have been a strength coach for 37 years and counting. This is a place where we help you maximize your strength as safely and efficiently as possible. Today, I had the great pleasure of having Mr. Matt Cusano from RyzeHRT. He is a FDN-P, which is a functional something. I don't know. We'll find out when he talks to us. I don't know what that means, but we're going to find out. But we're going to get all into stuff about hormone replacement, gut health, diet, all kinds of strategies for optimizing health. He's the man. And we had a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it. But before we get to that, don't forget, for your own needs, we recommend a high protein whole food diet at TNT Strength. In case you feel like there's some holes in that nutrition plan, we have 5 amazing supplements available. We have, of course, a chocolatey good, delicious whey protein, because we definitely want to hit those protein numbers every single day, people. We have some fish oil, get those good, friendly fats in your diet. Fantastic for anti-inflammatory needs and other things. We got some K2D3 out there for those bone health, immunities, good stuff. Man, there's some amazing research coming out about D3 right now. Incredible. Just the benefits keep rolling in. We have some probiotics. You got to have that healthy tummy. And of course, the number one, most researched, most comprehensive strength training supplement out there, creatine monohydrate. Don't fall for the hype, people. Every single day you turn around, there's some new super creatine gummy with a super HCl something, and it's got this, it's got that. And trust me, there's no such thing as a better creatine than just plain monohydrate. All the research has been done on it. It's cheaper and it's more effective. Don't waste your time. Don't fall for the hype.
Don't believe the hype.
Stick with the basics. And when you're building that home gym, if you need one, we highly recommend Anata Gym. Anata Gym is a company that makes smart gyms, and they are fantastic. They're like a basic, simple little platform with little robot motors inside. You can manipulate the resistance. It takes up the space of almost nothing. You can slide it under your bed. This thing it replaces barbells, dumbbells, everything. It's like an entire super squat rack all in one. So check out Anata Gym. And if you are interested, you can use the code TAKU, TAKU, to get 20% off anything in the Anata Gym store. All right. So please relax, sit back, and enjoy this episode with Matt Cusano from RyzeHRT at Truth Not Trends. Boom, baby. What's up, young man?
How are we doing?
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How about you guys?
You're doing well. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the Truth Not Trends podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So I think a good place to start, as always, is just kind of, introduce yourself to the audience, give a little background, and then we'll just take a chat. I got some ideas for questions, and we'll just go with as one of my Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys used to say, we'll flow with the go.
Sounds good to me.
Tell the folks, who you are, where you're from, what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a licensed FDN-P, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition practitioner. I've been practicing functional medicine for the past 9 years. Part of my practice is owning an online functional medicine and HRT clinic, which is called RyzeHRT. We've been open for the past 2 years now. Prior to that, I've been involved in the fitness and bodybuilding space for roughly 13 years as an online nutritionist and coach. So I do still have that team with about 5 coaches underneath me, working with various athletes from various walks of life. And then I also have a supplement company that does a combination of functional medicine nutraceuticals, and sports nutrition supplementation, such as glutamine, creatine, things of that nature.
Got it. Awesome. So as an FDN-P, how do you blend functional diagnostic approaches with the hormone replacement therapies, to create a sustainable, health solutions for your clients?
Yeah. So there's a huge component there. What everyone kind of needs to realize is that hormone optimization is a nuanced practice. If we're limited to thinking that this is just an application of a drug, we're way off base. And that's why so many people are limited in their ability to get real help from the Western medicine side of things, because typically it's just, I'm going to prescribe you this medication at this dosage and go from there. There's no understanding of how the body physiologically responds to hormone therapy, how your body metabolizes and converts hormones. Better yet, there's no understanding of why hormones would be imbalanced in the first place.
Sure.
So oftentimes we're digging deeper with patients, talking to them about stress, metabolic markers, lifestyle choices, sleep, nutrition, because all these components play into not only their hormones, but their symptoms that they have related to hormone imbalances. So sometimes it's not even actually a matter of improving hormones, it's improving the lifestyle aspects. And that's where the symptoms come into play. And there's other people who optimize their hormones and still have those symptoms, going back to the lifestyle components. So I think one of the big things that differentiates us at the clinic is we're not just looking to sell someone hormone therapy or only optimize their testosterone or something like that. We're looking to optimize their health. So we dig in deep with our initial intake and medical forms. We want to have the full picture of what they're going through when we get on that consult, so that we can provide them that expert information as to cause and effect, why they may be feeling things, and what the real solution to that is. Sometimes hormone replacement, sometimes otherwise.
Yeah. So interesting. It just makes me quickly think back, this is not quite direct, but relates to the healthcare system in general. Like my mom had a really bad stroke many years ago and had all kinds of complications. And they, of course, put her on this slew of medications. And I remember she, these days, right, you can find out information about this stuff pretty quickly, even if you're not an expert. She was having all these unpleasant side effects, and I looked it up, and directly there was like a certain medication that had these direct side effects that she was clearly manifesting. And, I said, hey, she's got these problems now, you're giving her these medications. And it's like, here's another one that does the exact same thing that doesn't associate with those. Why did you choose this one? And they're like, oh, because some people don't get those side effects, right? Like we just started with that one, even though we know that's a likely side effect. And as soon as they took her off that and switched, it all went away, and it just was so frustrating in that respect. Yeah. And that's just like a tiny window, right, of that.
Yeah. We could spend hours going on the soapbox about how our society doesn't really make sense in terms of our healthcare system. But I think to that point, one of those limitations is the stronghold insurance companies have on what doctors can and cannot do. I explain to people a lot that practitioners are, to a degree, are handcuffed by big pharma and by insurance companies. And in that exact situation, this may or may not be the reasoning, but in a situation similar to that, the physician has to try something first before the insurance company will approve the better option. Not based off of the best medication for the patient, it's based off of what will insurance allow first.
Right. Yeah, totally. So now, what about the difference between, balancing hormones versus replacement? Like, how do you determine whether someone needs hormone replacement therapy or if their issues can be resolved through like these other lifestyle changes that you're talking about, like nutrition or other interventions?
Yeah, that's a great question to ask. So one thing we do at our clinic, and generally you'll see this in functional medicine, is what we call a needs analysis. So with each patient, we're doing a needs analysis, meaning we're analyzing comprehensive blood work. We're not just looking at a CMP and testosterone and estrogen. I want to see their full thyroid. I want to see their cortisol and adrenal activity. I want to see their blood sugar and insulin. I want to see the full picture of how their body's working internally. I also want to see their symptom history and their medical history. And by looking at their symptoms, their medical history, and comprehensive blood work, it allows us to really deduce what could be happening. From there, it takes a certain level of understanding of cause and effect. What elicits these snowball effects, or I like to call them survival adaptations in the body? Most sex hormone dysregulation is actually a survival adaptation, because as cortisol goes up, whether we're talking about men or women, sex hormones tend to go down because a high stress or high threat environment is not a safe environment for fertility. And the body knows this. So the body's going to do these adaptations that we all look at as symptoms and dysfunction, but the body's doing it for survival. And if we can help the body understand that it's not in a threatening state, a lot of these things can improve on their own.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Obviously, there's different misconceptions about hormone replacement, TRT, HRT, whatever. There can be some stigmas or misunderstandings. So, what are some myths about these different therapies that you wish more people understood?
I think one of the biggest topics that grinds my gears is the thinking process around testosterone and its side effects. And most of this comes from the conversation of testosterone as a drug, not testosterone as a hormone that's naturally produced in our bodies, okay? When you Google, does testosterone increase blood pressure? Does testosterone skew cholesterol? Typically, you're going to see these answers saying yes, but we're all forgetting that we're born with testosterone. We're not born with high blood pressure. We're not born with skewed cholesterol. So testosterone, the hormone causing these things, or is it an imbalance of this hormone? Where this comes in is most of the time when we're looking into this research and seeing these side effects, that's due to people taking super physiological levels of testosterone, meaning they're not in a natural range. They're now in a supernatural range, which can lead to these side effects. But if you're staying within a natural, healthy range, there should be no side effects. You're just replacing what wasn't there naturally. The same is true with estrogen. There should really be no need for medical estrogen intervention when a man does testosterone therapy, because the body knows how to aromatize and knows how to have a balanced ratio of testosterone to estrogen. So most of the time, this overconsumption of estrogen is due to an overconsumption of testosterone. There could be other factors, how your body is detoxing estrogen. Stress can induce over-aromatization, but we can pinpoint those things as well. But generally, the issue I think I'd like to see discussed more often in an educated sense is testosterone as a hormone in our body, not as a drug.
Got it. Interesting. And that makes me think about kind of several different ideas cross my mind. Yeah. But just right off the top, just for the lay person, maybe just explain what aromatization means, right? Like, what does that mean to someone? Like, what So just because they don't, that way we can save them a Google.
Yeah, absolutely. So aromatization refers to the process in which your body metabolizes testosterone into estrogen. So what most people need to realize is that every single hormone starts out somewhere and then metabolizes downstream into other hormones. So when we're talking about most of the hormones in our body in terms of sex hormones, everything starts out as pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is our mother hormone, which is derived from cholesterol. From then, pregnenolone breaks down into DHEA. DHEA is a precursor to our androgens. DHEA then breaks down into testosterone, and then testosterone can either go down two separate pathways, either to estrogen or DHT. And in a woman's body, we're going to see primarily conversion to estrogen, In a man's body, we're going to see a very healthy balance primarily to DHT, but then a healthy level to estrogen. And it's when these things are not converting properly, too much DHT, too much estrogen, that's where we see a lot of side effects.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. The other thing that came to mind when you were saying that is, like when I talk to people about sort of things, I'm a strength coach and I've been doing this for a long time. I try to get people to understand, the genetic variation and so forth. And, the term I use a lot is, that people are expressed on a broad continuum, right? And the simple things to look at in those continuums are like height, right? There's little people and there's giants of the NBA, right? Intelligence, but every single component of human existence is expressed on that continuum, right?
Absolutely.
So with the hormones, how is it that and this is not a question I had planned originally, but how is it that you determine, is it just kind of trial and error? Because obviously you say a normal healthy range, but my normal healthy range is going to probably be slightly different than your normal healthy range, right? And is that just experimentation and sort of watching how things manifest over time as you manipulate? Because I know from our previous conversation, which I appreciate, you guys try to start kind of like minimal effective dose approach. And so you had said, let's say a general, you had said, maybe 800 to 1100 is a good range.
Yes.
But maybe my body's happiest at 800. I'm just making all this stuff up, right?
Of course.
So there's not a reason to push me to 11, even though those amps go to 11, but that's a separate story.
These go to 11.
Right.
These go to 11.
So the concept behind that optimal range, the 800 to 1100, this is based off of research over time that's deciphered that this is where men feel and function their best, but don't have side effects, symptoms, or long-term health detriment. Meaning, if your testosterone levels stay below 1100, there are really no cardiovascular effects or long-term health detriments. Once we get over 1100, 1200, 1300 and higher, that's what we consider super physiological. And that's where those arguments kind of go out the window. Below 800, men can also not necessarily feel their best. And so some men may feel perfectly fine at 700 or so, but they could be forming that much better at 800 to 850. So the goal is, like you mentioned, initiating everyone on minimal effective dosing. So based on their history, their lab work, where their levels currently sit, we decide what that minimal effective dosage is. For most men, it's going to be somewhere between 100 to 140 milligrams per week. Every person who does HRT should always be analyzing new blood work within 4 to 8 weeks after starting treatment. We typically emphasize 4 to 6 weeks at my clinic. So 4 to 6 weeks in, we're redoing blood work. We're analyzing where those numbers have changed in terms of health markers and hormone markers. And we're also analyzing symptom improvement and how they're feeling. And based off of all that information, we can then decide, do we need to tweak this dosage, or do we want to just hang here because they're feeling great, their numbers are great, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, even if someone's on the lower end of that, they have room to push the performance equation down the road for a limited period of time. Like you said, maybe 800 is your best, but would there be harm to doing a 3-month growth phase at 1100? No, that would be super beneficial. And then you titrate levels back down. So there's wiggle room of staying within a healthy range, but there may not be a benefit of someone on a consistent basis doing a higher dosage.
Got it. Yeah, it makes sense. Awesome. And that kind of covered some other stuff I was thinking about. So obviously lab testing is super important. What do you feel like are the most critical tests to rely on when you're evaluating these different levels? And I know it sounds like you go into a lot more detail. I mean, are you looking at things like, vitamin D levels and, all kinds of other things outside of just, free testosterone? And like you said, is there a test that's sort of the gold standard for you guys, or does it depend, or is there sort of just a basic array that you usually choose?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of lab options available just because we want to work with a patient's budget. And, based on their symptoms and goals, they may not need the most comprehensive panel available, and based on their age too. But we do like to get very comprehensive panels done at least once a year. So we have the full picture. There's very, very limited knowledge around adrenal function in America. In fact, I would dare to say that oftentimes thyroid dysfunction is misdiagnosed when it's actually adrenal function because there's so much of a focus around energy and productivity with regards to thyroid. And most of that is actually coming from the adrenals. So adrenal function is very important when people bring up fatigue, trouble sleeping, feeling past their prime. So it kind of depends on the individual, but as far as general health markers, their liver enzymes, their kidney function, and their cardiovascular function, along with their sex hormones, are kind of the bare minimum. However, if there's any signs of metabolic dysfunction or their goals are catered towards that, that's where I'm going to look at adrenal function, full thyroid markers, as you mentioned, vitamin D, and other inflammatory markers, HSCRP, which checks for cardiovascular risk, insulin resistance markers, fasted insulin, hemoglobin A1C, fasted blood sugar.
Do you look at like gluten sensitivities and stuff like that too? As part of your nutrition, sort of, because I know that's part of what you do, right? Manipulating nutritional stuff. Do you look at like gluten sensitivity stuff, like Cyrex tests, or because obviously people, it became sort of a trend, right? Like I'm going gluten free. But that being said, I know from my own experience that gluten sensitivities express themselves again on this broad continuum. It's like you don't just have to have celiac or nothing else. Some people manifest migraines or all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah,
from gluten. My business partner actually has some psoriasis stuff that's triggered by gluten specifically. Like he knows now, he didn't know that when he was a kid. He had terrible psoriasis.
Yeah.
Now he doesn't eat sugar or gluten, and his skin is perfect all the time. So it's just in him, that's the way it's coming out,
Well, believe it or not, there's a big misunderstanding around that. And that goes back to our society and medical model designed around addressing symptoms versus the root cause of the problem. Food sensitivities are a symptom. The food's not the problem. The problem is our gut's response to food. Celiac disease, gluten sensitivity, this means you have leaky gut syndrome. Leaky gut is why you're having that response to gluten, why you're having that negative response to sugar, why you're getting those migraines, why you're getting psoriasis and skin issues. Your gut is the same organ as your skin, and your gut is your second brain. So if any foods are leading to skin reactions, immune reactions, mental health reactions, that's a direct red flag that your gut is out of balance. And so, yes, manipulating your diet can limit your symptoms, but there's a much bigger issue happening internally that isn't getting addressed. And so, no, we actually don't test for food sensitivities at all. We instead get to the root cause of the problem and do comprehensive GI testing to look for infections, gut microbiome imbalances, leaky gut syndrome, overactive immune system responses, inflammatory responses, things of that nature. That's the root cause of those issues, so people don't have to limit their food choices.
Got it. Awesome. That's cool. So now talking about women and hormonal stuff. So hormone replacement therapies, I know from working with some other clients, can be pretty transformative for women, particularly during menopause. So what are some of the key factors you consider when working with women specifically, and even more specifically, like during menopause, as an example?
Yeah, so there's even more to unpack there, because going back to the conversation around stress, women are significantly more sensitive to stress compared to men when we're talking about physiologically. Don't get me wrong, from a mental toughness component, I do think women are significantly mentally tougher than men, but from a physiological and physical stress resilience, men take the cake. This is oftentimes related to how women produce hormones. Everyone assumes because men produce hormones in their testes, women produce hormones in their ovaries. And that's actually not 100% factual. Majority of women's hormones come from the adrenal gland. So as cortisol goes up, sex hormones go down, and this cascade is significantly easier to happen to women compared to men. We also have to understand women have different hormones than men, progesterone being a big one there. Progesterone is a precursor to cortisol. So as stress goes up in a woman's body, it steals away progesterone to produce more cortisol. This leads to irregular cycles. This leads to acne. This leads to skin issues. This leads to weight gain and cellulite accumulation. This leads to insomnia and anxiety and weight loss resistance. All the symptoms we know that 90% of women are experiencing is related to low progesterone, which is related to high stress. Now, there's other components there. Hormonal birth control. Hormonal birth control by design is crashing women's hormones. That's how it works. When we look at the mechanism of action of birth control, it's causing a reverse feedback loop that shuts down progesterone and sometimes estrogen, preventing ovulation and fertility. So women need to understand that if they've been taking birth control since 13 and now they're in their 30s or 40s, they've been chemically inducing menopause for 20 to 30 years. Then you have been extreme dieting, trauma from bad relationships, poor food choices. All those accumulations happening in society are just beating down on their reproductive health. And that's also beating down on their mental health and metabolic health.
Yeah.
So when a woman comes to us in their 40s, which is typically the premenopause stage, we have to analyze cause and effect. Is this age-related? Is this birth control induced? Or do they have internal dysfunction, stress, keeping their hormones dysregulated? And that's very important because if those components aren't addressed, they may not even benefit from the HRT.
Right. Yeah. Fascinating. And, kind of touching back on the idea of, how you had mentioned, that it's totally fine for men to have estrogen, right? Like if things are in balance, their bodies can tolerate. Like I think maybe women don't understand sometimes that they also have benefits from testosterone, right? Depending on the levels, right? Like, as I mentioned offline, I work with some, female bodybuilders who, have pushed the boundaries of their exogenous substance use. They're like pros that are like going way, way off the super normal range.
Yeah.
But at the same time, some of them having retired are using ongoing, support in a much more friendly area. And one of them in particular talks a lot about how she's paying attention all the time to the testosterone, to the growth hormone, all that stuff, and just like tweaking things up and down where she feels her best. And I think sometimes maybe, it's like black and white, like for people, right? Oh, men want testosterone, they don't want estrogen.
Right.
Women want estrogen, they don't want testosterone, right?
Right.
I don't want to turn into a man, I don't want to turn into a woman, right? Yeah. I mean, I can remember when I was a younger bodybuilder guy and I knew nothing about this stuff. I just thought, anything that made your estrogen go up even potentially was bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't eat any food that might have estrogen stuff. Don't, you know what I mean? Well, everything was like, no, I don't want that. Yeah. I don't want that in my body. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the guys need to realize, estrogen has a lot of important roles as long as it's in balance. And same thing for women. For men, estrogen is cardioprotective. It's neurologically protective. So as you age, it's preventing dementia and Alzheimer's. It's protecting your cardiovascular system. And it's important for our immune system. Having crashed estrogen as a man, one, you're not going to build muscle optimally, and you're going to feel like trash all the time. For women, same story as you're saying with testosterone. We are meant to have these hormones at an appropriate level. And so for women, where they benefit from proper testosterone is energy, motivation, resiliency to stress, like we talked about, and sex drive and ability to, enjoy sex. But the stress resiliency piece is huge because testosterone and cortisol combat each other, both coming from that adrenal gland. Men have 10 times the testosterone as women. They handle more stress and cortisol. Women succumb to stress and lose their cortisol. So oftentimes when we see women start a low dose of testosterone therapy, that's the first thing they feel: more energy, more resiliency to stress. They're no longer as overwhelmed. And it kind of has a relaxation effect too. It doesn't hurt that it boosts their libido as well.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome. So talk about your holistic support for the hormonal health stuff, like beyond the hormone therapy. Like, you talked a little bit about sleep and stress management and stuff, but how do you guys play with that as far as looking at it outside the hormone stuff? What other mechanisms are you, levers are you pulling?
Yeah, absolutely. So every time we speak with a patient, We're talking to them about their dietary choices, their lifestyle habits, and their sleep. A lot can be accomplished simply by improving their sleep schedule and their circadian rhythm. A lot can be accomplished simply by helping them establish better boundaries in their life in terms of, toxic people they let in, or maybe it's their day-to-day actions and choices. Some people are just trying to do way too much at once, burning the candle at both ends, and they kind of become their own worst enemy in that regard. Sometimes it's just a matter of giving a little bit of supplemental support. So my supplement company makes a product called Chill Factor. It's a group of different adaptogens, ashwagandha, phosphatidylserine, L-theanine, that assist in reducing cortisol and calming the body and calming the nervous system. So sometimes it's just a matter of adding in, some supplement support to assist their nervous system in calming down. But typically there are some action items, whether that be diet, lifestyle, sleep, something of that nature.
It does sound, from how you're discussing it, very holistic. I mean, if you're thinking about, the mental, emotional components I'm just listening to you. And it's just, when you're working closely with someone, it's hard on you, right, to see them struggling with these things, all those things, right? And you try to be as supportive as you can, but they're coming home and unburdening their horrible day, and you hear that cycle, right? And you're like, and you can't fix it. You can only listen,
right?
You know what I mean? they don't want you to fix it. Just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
So and then as the guy, you want to do something about it.
Yeah, I want to fix.
What are we going to do, right? Yeah, it's very hard. And you hate seeing it, right? It might have nothing to do with anything else but that, right? Just finding a way to mitigate the stress.
Yeah, the thing that I help a lot of people understand is that the human body wasn't made for 2025. It was made for caveman times, thousands of years ago. So the way our body perceives stress and the way we perceive stress in modern day life is very different. The body can't differentiate stressors. There's no such thing as good and bad stress. There's no such things as levels of stress. It's all viewed as a threat on survival.
Yeah.
Once we understand that and we analyze American society, we can see that 90% of disease and dysfunction are just adaptations for survival. High blood pressure, high blood sugar, anxiety, trouble sleeping, sex hormone dysfunction, weight loss resistance, insulin resistance. These are just survival adaptations because everyone is way too stressed.
Yeah, it's funny because I use that same concept, with my strength training clients. I'm trying to get them to understand that about stress. I always tell them, they're like, you only have one, the way I describe it is you only have one pool, right, that you're pulling from. It's like,
yeah.
And the workout, though you see it as an optimal thing, is also stress. And then you have relationship stress, job stress, blah, blah. And I go, there's not a job stress box and a relationship box and a workout box. They're all pulling off the same place.
Exactly.
And you got to get all that stuff figured out. And also, it's funny, I talk about the fight or flight stuff quite a bit too, because even when, we're working out, we're challenging our people to work very intensely, right? We train to failure. And you see those certain people, like, the fight or flight is induced, right, during a hard set even. And I get people to try to understand. Some people are naturally fighters and they kind of dig in, and other people, you see them like wiggling around and jiggling around. And I'm like, do you know why your feet are like running all over the place while you're doing that lat pull down? I'm like, because your body wants to run away,
Yeah.
I said, this is happening, right? This is fight or flight. You got to fight, right? This is why we're here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. So now, what about just ensuring safety and monitoring, like for your clients long-term, like the TRT, HRT?
Yeah.
What kind of strategies do you use to ensure, that there's the safety and optimize their health over the long run?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is going back to at least once a year getting comprehensive blood work to see how the full system is working, their cardiovascular health, their kidney function, and all their symptoms have been remediated. If they're feeling great, they're looking their best they have, they're showing up for their family and for their job, and their blood markers are all in an optimal range, there's really no reason for concern.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm just thinking, you're mentioning these ideas, which is all very interesting as far as like, if things are in a more balanced range, then you don't get a lot of these just preconceived just negative things that people think of, like you're on testosterone, so now you're going to have a heart attack, right? Or whatever. There's so much of that stuff out there, right? You got to go donate blood because, your blood's getting too thick and
Right.
blah, 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 blah. And again, a lot of people listening may not know any of this stuff, right? Not everybody's digging into these subjects, but there are, of course, more and more people all the time, thinking about it. And that's really one of the many reasons why I wanted to have you on, because I see these other clinics or whatever you want to call them, right? It's just very cookie cutter, right? They look at you on your phone. They go, say, you know what I mean? They go, okay, here's the drugs we're going to give you. You know what I mean? And they just prescribe testosterone and they just prescribe the anti-estrogen stuff. And it's just all part of the same. And I'm sure they're just putting like every single guy that comes through, and they do, they do ask for blood work, but it's, I don't feel like it's very comprehensive. They're just, unless there was like some major red flag, they're just going to go.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't mean this to sound dark or throw shade at anyone, but most of the brick and mortar clinics are out there for one reason or only: profits.
Sure.
And so when you prioritize profits, you're trying to maximize how many people are purchasing items from you. And then you're also trying to maximize how many items can I sell per client. Oh, Liam, you're interested in muscle growth. Okay, let's do testosterone. And obviously, because we're going to give you a bolus dose of testosterone, we're also going to put you on an aromatase inhibitor. But let's not stop there. You could also benefit from some growth hormone peptides. And then because the growth hormone peptides might impact your blood sugar, we're going to put you on some metformin. And the list just goes on. It's the same exact healthcare business model as Western medicine, just expedited in a very short sense. Each product leads to another symptom, which leads to another product or solution. And we're trying to avoid that.
It's funny. I've also told people a lot of time, like I'll tell them, like, you mentioned, and I told my clients, I go, you understand that cholesterol, that's where testosterone comes from, right? And like I go, you go to the doctor and he says, we're going to put you on a drug that's going to push down your cholesterol. And then you go, you know what? I don't feel so good. And he goes, don't worry, I got this other pill. It's a little blue pill. You can take that one because now your testosterone is not working because we're driving it down artificially. So now we're going to give you some ED medication, right? Same thing. Yeah. It's like, nobody gets these connections. It's frightening. And of course, you got the statins, which is like that could be a whole podcast in and of itself. But yeah, crazy.
Yeah. It's one of the main issues we see is, and it's not so much the practitioner's fault, but in our system, everyone's working in silos. We see a specialist for our cardiovascular health, a specialist for our thyroid health, a specialist for our blood sugar, a specialist for our sex hormones. No one's looking at the full picture and saying all these things are interconnected. And most of the time it's related to stress.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. So now, are there like any like emerging trends in this sector? The TRT, HRT stuff, but are any advancements in the hormone replacement or other things that are you see coming down the pipe or that have piqued your interest? Is there anything new or exciting?
I mean, peptide therapy is a constant item that's growing and further research is developing. We actually saw a decline in available peptides in the past year or two due to some FDA regulations that honestly had nothing to do with bettering Americans' health and had everything to do with big pharma licensing and profits. With the new administration coming in the next couple of days, they've already mentioned a reemergence of a lot of great peptides that assist in inflammation, that assist in detoxification support, that can assist in GI dysfunction, in combating autoimmune disease. So we're seeing a lot of things come back, but I would say what I see coming into the scene the most lately is mitochondrial support. There's a lot of research around improving mitochondrial function because mitochondria is basically the powerhouse to every function in our body. And now we're realizing that stress and toxic burden and all these different things we're being introduced to throughout our lives is now impacting our mitochondria in a negative way, which then leads to autoimmune, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, weight loss resistance, etc.
Right, yeah, so I don't know. Peptides is not an area of expertise for me at all, but I'm hearing about it, of course, all the time. And it sounds like there's basically like a peptide for almost anything you could think of. Like, I mean, that's the way it sounds like to me. Because like, it could peptide for that, peptide for this. So it could be fascinating if you say like good research is being done, and it's ironic and unfortunate about the FDA as well, because we know, like, I mean, why did testosterone or steroids or whatever you want to, however you want to, just get classified in the same places like heroin and cocaine at one point? The misinformation around just those substances is so huge. As a strength coach, again, I've been doing this year, 2025, it's 37 years I've been in the business. So I've worked with a little bit of everything in my career, but it's often, people meet me and they're like, oh, you're like a fitness guy, so you must think steroids are terrible. I'm like, no, I'm like, you can misuse them just like anything else, but it's like I don't, that's a whole conversation. Like I had a guy, I don't know if you're familiar, Alexander Hutchison. He wrote a book called In Defense of Doping.
Yep.
He's a fascinating guy. I had him as a guest on the podcast, and that was an interesting conversation. And again, it's like a topic to me, like I don't even consider it to be cheating necessarily. It's just there's so many nuances to that whole conversation as well. But yeah, this is great. What about I had mentioned to you offline about the SARMs. That's another area I don't know that much about. Now, what I've been hearing, and again, I may be totally off base, is that they can be kind of more hepatotoxic, or more harder on your liver, depending on how you're manipulating them and so forth.
Yeah,
because that's another thing that people just assume. Oh, you take steroids, it's bad for your liver, right? And I'm hearing that about SARMs, and again, it's not something I know a lot about.
Yeah.
Is that something you guys play with, or at least are exploring, or at least you need to be aware of it?
So we do have some available through compounding pharmacies, but it's not items that we use too much with our patients. So a couple things there, in terms of liver toxicity really comes into the equation with any type of oral product we're discussing. So
Sure.
In terms of steroids or PEDs, liver toxicity is mainly focused on orals.
Yeah.
So there's limited to no liver toxicity coming from injectable steroids.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. That's another thing I try to get people to understand, right? Because people just assume needles is scary, right?
Right.
And a pill is so much. So pills got to be better and quicker and easier. Yeah. And I've always been telling people, I go, it's way harder. Your body has to deal with it right now. If I inject it, it's like time release, right? It's gonna so it's not like just dropping and being pounded into my liver right then. It's gonna go right into my system. I'm taking those pills all the time. Yeah, that's not a good thing. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. No, you're 100% correct. And so in the term of SARMs, what we're looking at is, so SARMs are selective androgen receptor modulators. And so they work on the same androgen receptors that testosterone and other PEDs would work on. So therefore, if you're already on testosterone or utilizing androgenic PEDs, SARMs are actually going to hinder your response by taxing the same receptor. So now you've added toxicity to your body and lessened the benefit from androgens. So for most men, SARMs are not going to be the most effective way to improve performance long term. Low dose TRT, low dose nandrolone, and growth hormone and peptides and things of that nature are going to be way safer long term than a SARM. I think the only people that could really argue the benefit of SARMs would be females, because they have such a mild androgen effect. And so, women could use them for a short period of time, not get too much negative detriment from them, but still get some performance aspects because they're so sensitive to androgens. So
it sounds like if someone was thinking about experimenting, it would be better to do one or the other, right? Like not, you don't want to do it as a simultaneous sort of cocktail.
No, I think that would actually diminish your results. And for men, if you do choose to do SARMs, just keep in mind that any uptick in androgens, your body is going to recognize that and try to go back to homeostasis. So kind of like the birth control equation for women, this is what's called a reverse feedback loop. As you bring in exogenous androgens, your body's going to shut down natural production of androgens to create balance. So even SARMs like ostarine, if used for 8 to 12 weeks as a guy, you're likely you've now reduced your testosterone production.
Yeah. And then, of course, that's the other reason why, when you go with those super maximal levels, with the guys with, getting, the estrogen stuff and getting, gyno and all those kind of things, right? That's why it becomes an issue because they're pushing those boundaries.
Exactly.
And again, that's why all these unfortunate, young guys are like dropping dead because they're not thinking about it. They're just, short-term benefit and shotgunning all these substances, without thinking about how they're interacting. And, and then combine that with American culture, more is better. A little is good, a lot's good. I got to go twice as much, man.
Right.
That'll do it for me. Cool. So what about kind of how the mind-body connection, like how the hormonal imbalances can affect mental health? Because it sounds like you're really aware of that stuff when you're working with your clients, which I appreciate. So are you're looking at that as well? Not just the stress, but how these, I'm guessing that as let's say you have a client of, as I described, 50 something woman, it's high stress, blah, blah, blah. It may not just be the hormones that she needs, but it may be that by looking at the blood work, tweaking, and then it could sort of settle things down. It sounds like reduce.
For women, progesterone is the calming hormone. And this is where they're not hearing this from Western medicine. Western medicine emphasizes progesterone as a pregnancy hormone, and they kind of leave it there. But progesterone is essential for women's mental health and calmness and relaxation. So when women are deficient, they have a lot of trouble sleeping. They have a lot more anxiety, depression, mental health struggles, which is why if you zoom out and look at female society as a whole, most women on birth control are also prescribed anxiety meds and SSRIs. There's a direct correlation with the estrogen to progesterone balancing act happening in that body. The cortisol is another piece there. If you are running from a lion, you're going to have anxiety. You're going to have trouble sleeping. This is a survival mechanism for you. So cortisol will always elicit some mental health detriment and anxiety. Testosterone can also play into that, especially for men. Imbalanced testosterone and estrogen can lead to men having sleep issues, men having a lot more anxiety and depression, and just being more moody and irritable. The gut plays another big component here because the gut is where most of our neurotransmitters are made. And so if we have any type of GI dysfunction, we're then going to have imbalances of serotonin, dopamine, melatonin, GABA, all these things that play into sleep, relaxation, and mental health. So we look at a couple different things because they can all be intertwined. The gut is where every single hormone metabolizes. So a lot of people with gut issues then have hormone issues, cortisol issues, you name it.
And how do you analyze the gut specifically, like when you have a new client, a patient, whatever you want to call them? Because obviously, are you using blood work to look at the gut as well, or is there other tests that you use to try to find out what's going on in there?
Yeah, there are some markers on blood work that can certainly lead us to believe there's GI dysfunction, but we go off of the idea of test, don't guess. So we actually do comprehensive GI testing separate from blood work. The GI testing we do, it's called a GI map test. It's a comprehensive stool test. So you collect a sample, you ship it off to the lab, and then the results come back to us. It shows us every level of good bacteria as well as every level of bad bacteria. It shows us how you're absorbing nutrients. It shows us the presence of leaky gut. It shows us how your immune system is working, since most of that is in the gut. So it's a very encompassing look at how your GI function is working.
Got it. So you got to do a poop test.
That's it.
That makes sense. Awesome. All right. That's cool. So now you mentioned, you have a team of coaches.
Yes, sir.
Under you, and you have yourself has a background in bodybuilding and so forth, and it sounds like all your coaches do as well, or at least some of them. Do you guys help people with exercise related components of their lifestyle? Like do people come to you and not just look at their gut, their hormones and stuff, but are they like saying, I need a workout? Like
Absolutely.
Can you give me do you program for people? Do you do things like that as well?
Yeah. So the coaching team is actually completely separate from the clinic. Some of my coaches are specialists at the clinic, but as far as coaching goes, We are just a, online coaching team offering services to people who are looking for nutrition plans, workout plans. If we're just talking the basic lifestyle client who wants to lose 20 pounds for summer, or if we're talking about the elite competitor who's trying to make it to the Olympia, we have coaches to program for both.
Nice. Okay, cool. How do they do it? Do they do stuff like meeting with them over Zoom? Are they actually like looking at what is this guy doing and then like creating a program for them to follow? Like, here's what I want you to do, A, B, C, and then obviously track and tweak.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, are they physically there? Like, are they right there coaching somebody? I mean, does it depend on location?
It definitely depends. Most of my coaches do offer in-person services around their area, but we also offer online coaching to the entire nation and even international. So most of it is done online. They fill out intake forms, they get blood work. All of that happens on the front end. From there, we decide about their baseline nutrition and training and supplements. And then it's weekly check-ins, paying attention to a lot of different biofeedback markers to know when adjustments need to be made, when we should titrate up certain supplements or PEDs, when we should adjust training volume. All of that is manipulated based off of the individual's biofeedback.
Got it. And so, I mean, if you're working with people, say in the Olympia or things like that, obviously then these people are likely to be on that super high levels, right? The outside, the normal ranges. And then you just have to, they're making their own choices. And so you have to do your best to support that.
Yeah, it's in a controlled setting. What I prefer from my clients would be your initial blood work is not on super physiological doses. I need to see a baseline level of your general health, because if you're unhealthy before PEDs, we shouldn't even be having this discussion. The baseline health needs to be optimal, and then just leveraging low doses of PEDs as needed as you go through your process, whether that's muscle growth, fat loss, you name it. So we're always establishing healthy baseline numbers. We may do a controlled blast, if you will, for 3, 6, 8 months, but we're always coming back down and reestablishing those healthy numbers down the line.
It's funny because, again, our approach is very similar with our programming, just with regards to strength training, minimal effective dose, right? Even with strength training.
Get the most out of the least. That's just common sense.
Yeah, but it isn't common, unfortunately, in practice, right?
It isn't common.
Yeah. I mean, I the term I often use with a lot of these coaches is, they try to cram 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, but there's just I feel like many of them sort of like throw stuff at the person and see how much they can take until they break. And then go, oh, we better back off.
Yeah.
Versus like my approach is, let's start with literally the least amount we could possibly need. And if it isn't working, there's literally only one direction to go. We can just go add a little bit more. And, that's why we, primarily with strength training, even we often are, proponents of like just doing one set to failure, like with a lot of our people, especially with our non-athletes, right? It's an intervention that works across such a broad continuum. I mean, my oldest client that I'm working with right now is 91 years old. He had never worked out his entire life. He started with me at the young age of 89.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's doing fantastic, and strength's coming up, all those things, and we see this every day with a very minimal dose having a huge impact. And of course, the other advantage is, the biggest resistant is always time, right? I don't have time. And it's like, if we're talking 1 hour a week of strength training, right? We want them to do other things, active lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
But we're talking like 2 30-minute workouts, right? Almost anyone can fit that in.
Totally.
And when you know how to apply it, and again, this is one-on-one. So you're not in a gym where people are, sitting around looking at Instagram, taking 10 steps, 5 minutes. This is super efficient, and so we get it done. And again, it's not uncommon for us, within, 8 or 10 weeks to have like a 60-year-old person put on like 5 pounds of muscle or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're not tweaking any hormones, so it's amazing.
Yeah. I think people need to realize that, training, modalities, nutrition, PEDs and supplements, these are all weapons in our arsenal. But that doesn't mean you use every single weapon at your first try. In fact, that's a great way to miss out on a lot of weapons. If you leverage them one at a time as needed, now you just went from 4 weeks of progress to 4 years of progress because your body never stops getting new stimulus. The new stimulus is what elicits change.
Absolutely. Yeah. We use the term unaccustomed stimulus, right? So absolutely. I totally agree with that. And yeah, and it's unfortunate. And I think even, they make this mistake of, you have, obviously if you're in the Olympia, you have amazing genetics already. And now you're adding exogenous stuff. That's totally fine. But it's again, like they think that because they have the better genetics, then they need and the drug, they need more stuff. It's like, again, why not use the least, and find out. And again, be more recovered, not be beat down. Why are you in the gym like twice a day for 6 days a week when you could be in there like 3 times a week? You know what I mean? Or whatever, right? There's a million ways. Programming is a whole other thing. But yeah, it's just fascinating to me because again, I've been creating programs for athletes for many years all over the world as well. And it's funny, like 99% of the time I just say, tell me what you're doing. And they send me everything that they're doing. And it's always too much. I just snip the redundant parts and then I give it back to them. And then I go, okay, go do that. And then, they go, wow, I feel so much better, And I'm like, yeah, that's right. You're finally like recovered. Yeah. And the other thing I do with a lot of my distance clients is like, when they come to me, is the first thing I make them do is take 10 days off from everything, right? I already know you're overtrained.
Yep.
Just take 10 days off before we even do anything. And then we can figure out where to start when you've actually had a chance to rest. And that's like literally the hardest part for any of them. They can't take a break, and it's like,
no, they're so emotionally attached to their routine and to the gym and the feeling that they get from the workout, but they're thinking rationally about recovery and actual CNS activation and muscle growth. None of those things are happening because you're overtraining, but you're so fixated on your routine,
It becomes like a social ritual, right?
Yeah.
And again, when you're the big guy, maybe you're the biggest guy in your gym, right? Then that's just more like reward, right? Walk around, look at me, I'm the biggest guy. I'm the king. Yeah, and then until you get, until you get out there, and then you realize, no, you're not quite there. We have some, very big, strong guys in our gym, like every gym does. But we had a guy come in who was a Olympia competitor, and it's like our biggest, strongest guy. If a normal person stands next to him, they go, oh my God, this guy is so big and strong. And then the Olympia guy walks in, you're like, oh my God, he looks like a baby.
Yeah.
Right. It's like there's always another level, right?
Always a bigger fish.
Yeah, always. Well, this has been wonderful, man. Really enjoy it. I don't want to keep you too long. I don't know what your time is like.
No problem. I got some time.
How do people find you? And if they want to talk to you, or if they're intrigued by this, or they hear this episode and they want to know where to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find me on social media. My Instagram is Matt_theBodyTech. They can always email me. The best email is going to be matt@RyzeHRT.com. And if they're wanting to check out our clinic and learn more information, the clinic is called RyzeHRT. That's RyzeHRT. And that website is just RyzeHRT.com. We offer a ton of different things outside of just the hormone optimization piece. We do offer athletic optimization. So there are some FDA-approved PEDs that we can leverage in the right setting with the right individual. We can get prescription Anavar, Winstrol, Deca. For a while, we were able to get Equipoise, but we're not able at this time. We did just see that certain pharmacies are having oral Primobolan become available. And then we also have tons of different peptides, IGF-LR3, which is insulin growth factor, amazing for quick results, especially in weak points that you're trying to bring up. We obviously have various growth hormone peptides, a lot of different fat loss peptides, and anti-inflammatory peptides as well. Whatever your goals are, we can definitely assist. It just really comes down to the person. One topic we could definitely talk about would be female PEDs. This is a very, very misunderstood and misinformed topic. And it goes back to your exact point about the pill versus the syringe. Everyone kind of just assumes that a pill is going to be safer than a syringe because a syringe is so intimidating. But what women need to realize is when it comes to safe approaches to enhancement, we're going off after the things that offer the best reward with the smallest risk. So when it comes to risk aversion, the lowest risk items are the hormones that your body already produces naturally: testosterone, HGH, insulin. These three hormones are going to be the lowest risk compounds to leverage for your goals, assuming you have proper guidance to leverage said compounds. Anything taken too much, even Tylenol, has negative, dangerous detriments. So devil is in the dosage. But when it comes to comparing, Anavar to testosterone, we can just go down that rabbit hole. So for women, avoiding viralization side effects, masculinizing side effects, that's big. So what are the two drivers of viralization in women? Dosage and duration of use. Yes, some compounds can be a little bit more risky than others, but at the end of the day, it's dosage and duration of use. So with female TRT, women are so androgen sensitive that they take very, very low doses of testosterone. Most women do great, somewhere between 3 to 5 total milligrams per week. Then when we think about Anavar application, even small little bikini competitors are averaging 5 to 10 milligrams a day.
I know it's crazy. And I don't mean to interrupt at all, but I don't think people understand that that's happening, right? Like that it's so rampant in the physique world that even bikini girls are taking PEDs, right? I mean, and this is something I've been telling people for years, but it's like they don't get it, right? Like it's at every level. And then again, combined with the fact that it's so misunderstood, right? But they don't understand, they really want to win or whatever, but they don't understand, what to do, how to do it. And then they don't realize they're damaging themselves potentially. Is it worth it? But anyway, go back to what you're saying. That was great.
Yeah. So, and you're 100% right. If women are looking at the NPC or the IFBB, 99% of competitors are enhanced. In fact, if you try to compete and win in the NPC or IFBB naturally, you're probably going to lead to extra detriment because a natural body isn't meant to look or perform that way. So the NPC and the IFBB are unnatural leagues for a reason. But going back to the dosage duration equation. So the average female competitor at a conservative place is doing 5 to 10 milligrams of Anavar a day. That's 35 to 70 milligrams per week totaling. Whereas with testosterone, we're at 3 to 5 milligrams per week. The difference in dosage is 10 to 20 times per week. How can you argue that Anavar is safer when you have toxic load, skewed lipids, and more viralization in comparison to low-dose testosterone? There's no valid argument towards one use or the other there. And so if you start there, then you kind of realize that everything else you learn in bodybuilding and fitness is wrong as well. Another big misconception is that androgens burn fat. That doesn't happen. And yes, androgens help with metabolic function, and that could maybe help move the needle as far as fat loss, but androgens are not fat burners. Androgens are designed to maintain muscle mass during a caloric deficit. So the point of androgens is to hold on to muscle while dieting, not burn fat. Therefore, as a woman, stacking multiple androgens in a fat loss phase is not only pointless, it's stupid, because now you're dysregulating the hormones that actually do help with fat loss: estrogen, progesterone, thyroid, cortisol. So women should be very, very cautious with androgen usage, especially in a fat loss phase. Understanding when and why to take PEDs is something that I truly feel is missing often in fitness. And don't get me wrong, in the past 3 to 4 years, I do think there's been a huge movement towards better education, towards enhancement. But I do still think that the past 10 to 20 years has misled a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm sure that's totally true. It's funny. One of the women that I work with, she's a professional open bodybuilder, and again, talk about just having a whole nother level of genetics and exogenous stuff. I mean, she probably is only like 5'3" or something. And she walks around like 175 pounds at like 5% body fat.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah. And, some of these girls are like, again, they're like, 200 pounds, single digit body fat, and they, they come into this studio and everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? It's like it's a whole nother world. But they all are, she, again, having done this for a long time and probably not, unfortunately, as, effectively as could have, she's obviously got all these side effects too, different voice and, all that stuff. It's just, she's just accepted it as part of the mission. You know what I mean? And I don't know whether, some of that probably will never go away. Right. And who knows?
No. And we also have to be cautious about divisions because there's obviously way different levels there.
Sure.
If a woman has devoted herself to being a professional women's physique competitor, professional bodybuilder, professional power lifter, that's their career, that's their livelihood. So they're accepting the risk and long-term detriments that come with that.
Right.
However, bikini competitors, most of them aren't planning on doing this for the rest of their lives. Most of them have full intentions of starting a family. And those are the ones that need to be very cautious with their choices, because even 3 to 5 years of the wrong choices could really impact your future goals. And at the end of the day, it's not worth it. We're talking about a plastic trophy most of the time as being the only benefit.
Right.
If you're a pro competitor, you might make money, but that's even a maybe. Very few pros make money.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? That for all the work and time that they put in, even now, right? Even in our current, even the Mr. Olympia now, like they're not making any money compared to any other sport.
No way.
For all the energy and time and effort and money that they put in. And the only time they make money is if they, just like almost is if they get some kind of deal with like some, some supplements or side gig where they're, advertising, whatever, right? But there's no money in the sport itself. It's like hard work for almost no, except for bragging rights.
That's it. That's really it.
Yeah, what are you getting out of it? It seems, it's pretty crazy. You got to be very dedicated. I work with a lot of combat athletes in my career as well, and it's very similar. Unless you're at the top of the top of the top, especially women, which is very, we already know the giant disparity there. But I was the strength coach for the 3-time women's world boxing champion, and
wow,
she had to work like a regular job. You know what I mean? And she had all the belts. She was the champion, the world champion, right? 3 divisions, the whole thing. She had to work a regular job to, she's making like $5,000 if she won a fight. And you got some, a man, he gets 10 million when he loses the fight, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And again, no sponsorships, none of that stuff, right? Like nobody wants a female boxer, right? Yeah, it's terrible. That's a whole another story, man. So cool. Well, I'm really excited to, I have some people that hopefully I can even sort of send your way. I've been lucky enough to have some people put their trust in me for quite a long time. And, I have some clients I've been working with for 10, 15 years, and I see their bodies change as they age, and see that, and I know that their performance is not what it was. And, so I want to be able to have a place where I can send them to get support, outside of what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
Because I do what I can. But I also want to like help people feel like it's a good choice and, not avoid any kind of stigma about it.
Yeah, they have to have trust in the system, and trust in the steps and the actions that they're taking. Now, one thing that I'll an insight that I'll try to provide to anyone you're working with who's over 50, we have to be cautious because society is very good at teaching us to disregard our symptoms and dysfunction and just normalize it as, oh, well, I'm getting older.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing we have to realize is that the number on our driver's license, our age, isn't actually necessarily the determining factor in why we feel so bad. It's the downregulation of our hormones and our body's natural processes that are causing us to feel so bad. So, I'm sure a lot of the people you work with who are beyond 50 are working to rewind the clock, so to speak, and continue to feel and function their best. And hormone therapy done appropriately will help them reverse that clock and fight off a lot of the detriment that they would see in the next 10 to 20 years, especially women.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I know for my own, I'm intrigued by it myself, and transparently, some of those standard sort of concerns that we discussed earlier are things that have kept me from exploring, like, because again, I don't want to have to worry about, like, have I donated blood often enough? All those little things, right? And again, a lot of people don't even know that that might be a concern or not. But I know enough. I know enough to know that like, is that something I want to? Oh, is that a box I want to open? Where now I'm taking these things, but I also, like, if I forgot to donate blood, and whatever, right? My hematocrit levels are out of whack, and and again, maybe that's something that wouldn't even manifest if I'm working with the right team, right? But you start to feel like, oh, it's like just a given. If I take this, now I'm going to have to do that for the rest of my life. Right? You know what I mean? So, like, I'm intrigued with the benefit, but do I also want the other parts, the downside parts, potentially? Not necessarily. But I also want to feel my best. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm 63 and I feel pretty good most of the time.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I could feel better.
Of course. Well, and the big thing with blood pressure and hemoglobin or hemoglobin, hematocrit, red blood cell count, most of this is coming from stress and inflammation. And what people need to realize is they likely had those issues before TRT. That's why their testosterone was low, stress and inflammation. So it's not that the testosterone caused this. There was already a fire brewing, and we just sprinkled some gasoline on it because that dosage of testosterone is a little bit too high. And now it's causing further oxidative stress. That can be a real thing, but that goes back to, well, you would never know if you didn't check your cortisol and inflammatory markers. There's so much value in getting those comprehensive labs so we can trace back that symptom to the real root cause rather than just assuming, oh yeah, it's the test.
And is it when you say comprehensive labs, like, is it one one visit? You go give some blood, and then it's been the certain labs that have been requested. Is it like a one and done type of thing? Imagine I'm a new client. You want to get the very comprehensive lab. Do I just go to a place near me, and you guys have requested that those specific tests?
Yeah,
and they know how much blood to draw and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So we have a partnership with Quest Diagnostics, and they have locations all around the country. We built lab panels based on kind of minimal needs, maximal needs. So if you came to us saying, I want, the most comprehensive to address, or just take a look at how everything is functioning, that would be a comprehensive functional panel. At our clinic, it's only $275 cash out of pocket, and that checks everything: adrenals, thyroid, fasted insulin, blood sugar, liver, kidneys, heart, CRP. Everything is being checked with that panel. And that gives us a really good idea of how your internal body is functioning and some cause and effect to some symptoms you might be experiencing.
And then would someone usually, as part of that comprehensive sort of kickoff point, do the poop test as well?
That depends. So if someone is coming to us already reporting GI issues on their medical form, chronic heartburn, constipation, IBS, or they're on some type of GI medication like omeprazole or Prilosec, immediate red flag, you need GI testing. But sometimes they don't have direct GI symptoms. They might have a lot of other issues happening in their body, such as type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, skewed LDL, cholesterol readings, or high CRP, which means their cardiovascular risk is higher. These are all signs that there's still an internal burden, just not showing its head entirely. So sometimes we'll get through the initial blood work, do that review, and then say, you know what? I think there's more going on that we haven't found yet. Then we talk to them about the test. And then at that point, they say, you know what? Now that you mention it, I do have a lot of trouble with food sensitivities and constipation. I just didn't think to put that on my form.
Right.
And then we move on with the testing.
Got it. That makes sense.
There's also a group of people, men and women, who don't benefit from testosterone therapy or hormone therapy. And like I mentioned, hormones metabolize and convert through the gut. So we've had guys come to us they've worked with various clinics. They've been on TRT for 5 years, the levels are still in the 500s. And we do some GI testing. We find some imbalances with bacteria and leaky gut. We address that. No other changes. And their levels are now at 900 instead of 500. And all we did was improve the metabolization pathway.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a lot to think about. I'm gonna have to.
It's so much more complex than just this dose, at this time.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's always going to be the case. People, as you say, it's a byproduct of our system in general, right? And people want to make money, right? That's why they're in business.
That's it.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, I am going to. I better let you go, and but maybe you can come back and visit us again.
I'd love to.
And I really appreciate your time. And Logan, I guess, is an old friend of yours, right?
He is. We went to college together.
Yeah. So he's the one who recommended. So I appreciate that. Recommended I talk to you. And so give him some props for the connection. And I'm hoping I can, steer some people your way. And we can talk about that some more offline as well. And I'll definitely be staying in touch.
That sounds great, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time. It was fantastic. Get some great information. I'm going to be excited for this one to go on air. And wish you a great 2025.
Likewise, brother. Thank you for having me. You take care.
Yeah. I'm going to be checking in with you soon.
All right, guys. Well, you guys have a great day.
Cheers.
See you guys.
Boom, baby. What's up, people? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Truth Not Trends. That's right here at TNT Strength Headquarters, Truth Not Trends.
Please, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And don't forget to share with a friend.
You can find us on the web at tntstrength.com.
That's right, TNT Strength now coming to you in person at 5255 College Avenue in Oakland, California. You can call the studio 510-768-5421. You can also text us at 855-796-9905.
Or shoot us an email at contact@tntstrength.com. And whatever you do, stay off of that stupid blue bubbly boasting.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top?
Mixed and edited by Desmond McNeese for We Mixed It, LLC. Go to whatsoundsawesome.com.
These go to 11.